So let's go ahead and look at the nose. Just like in any facial feature, you need to understand the anatomy and what's underneath, because that will help you with your rendering. So when you look at a nose, okay, you can see here that this part is the cartilage, the soft part of your nose. And if you look to the side of your nose, this part is your bone structure. Typically, the skin here, there's not really any muscle or tissue under here. So typically, this is where you're going to end up with a highlight on the nose. And you could kind of see here, this is exactly where that highlight is resting, okay? It'll dip down, and a lot of times you're going to get a shadow in this area of the nose. And that's because that's where the bone ends, and then your cartilage starts here, okay? This end of your nose comes outward, and that's why there's typically a highlight on this part of the nose, because it's farther in front. There is typically shadows here because that's where your nose comes down into the face. These raise a little bit, and then this actually comes back into the face. So anywhere you see darks is because that is where your skin or cartilage actually pushes back into your face. Anywhere you see highlights, that's where that is actually coming forward. So for the nose, it's extremely important to get all of these shadings in the correct positions to make your nose look more 3D. When you draw your nose, you're going to start with just putting the basics in. So right now I'm starting with kind of like a gesture line, and I'm gesturing in with my H pencil where the nostrils are. This part right here, the bottom of your nose. And then I'll throw in the other nostril. Depending on how your face is tilted, your nostrils are either going to be straight across, or your nostrils might be tilted depending on the position of your face. So keep that in mind. This nose is obviously a straightforward head. It's not tilted at all. It is to the side a bit, and so that's why we see a little bit more of this nostril on this side. So I'm going to go ahead and add that in. This is probably as far as you're going to get. You might end up coming up here and throwing in your shadows here. Then interesting thing about a nose is the reason why it's dark here is because this is exactly where your eyes will sit. Once you get it laid out, you can see I did that pretty quickly. There's not quite a lot to draw with the nose, but there's a lot to shade. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the H pencil. And again, I'm not pressing hard. I'm letting the pencil do the work. And I'm going to go ahead and shade in where the darks are. This part of the nose is your forehead. And this part is actually, for the most part, right across from where your eyes are. This part always gets a light shadow because that actually pushes into your head a little bit. It's kind of a little divot that goes down, and then your nose comes up where the highlight is and then back down again. So that's why you have these little subtle changes in your nose, and it's extremely important to get them in there. You can't just leave it bright white. You have to have that ebb and flow of these subtle values in your nose. That's what's going to make your face look more 3D. I'm going to bring this in a little bit because I'm noticing that the dark comes in a little more. Again, sharp pencil. It might look like my pencil is going fast, but I'm actually using really small pencil strokes so that I can keep it nice and smooth. This is where your cheekbone sits. So we're going to end up having some shading here as well. This always comes in a little further. The nice thing is that you're mimicking it from the photo, so you have to be able to see where these changes are. This is going to get darker around the nostril because your nostril always casts a shadow onto your cheek. Now, depending on the lighting, it might be a darker or lighter shadow, more harsh. This is where your cheek is, so a lot of times you're going to end up with a shadow coming out this way. Then, again, that cast shadow is going to sit on your cheek. This part, remember, this part of your nostril comes forward, so that's why it's lighter here. So it dips here, and that's why you have a shadow here. So again, using the H pencil, and I'm just helping myself out and putting where the darks go. What I'll do next is once I get all the darks laid out, I will end up coming back with the 2B and then just making the darks darker as I go. This part of your nose is always sticking out. This is the furthest part. This is where you're going to get a highlight here. Now, if you remember anything about reflected light happens where you have a highlight, you have a core shadow, and then you have a reflected light. A lot of times, the bottom of the nose here has reflected light, so it's lighter here. So we're going to end up putting a shadow here, keeping this ball of the nose having a highlight. And then what will happen is there's a reflected light here. You're going to end up with a shadow. This shadow comes down into what we call a Cupid's bow. And the Cupid's bow will come a little bit more prominent when we talk about the lips. But your Cupid's bow is this little divot here. Okay, so you can see how it kind of comes down, and that's why you have a cast shadow here. You can even see in this photo there's some reflected light here where it's a little lighter and it's darker here. Okay, so we're going to end up adding a Cupid's bow here in the next part of the drawing. Right now we're going to add the cast shadow here, cast shadow underneath the nostril here. Because of the lighting, you're going to have a crisper edge on this side of the nostril just because of the way the photo is. But again, you're still going to have this cheekbone over here, and that's why it's also very important to shade and not just leave it paper. So we're going to dust a little lighter value here. This part, again, is that bone. You always have a highlight here. So you can't shade this. So how do you make it lighter? You can shade against it, and that will automatically make this area look like it's more forward. So the darker edge you have, the brighter the other side looks. So that's why this edge can be a lot darker because it comes out more farther. This area doesn't come out as far, so that's why this shadow might be a little bit more subtle. So you're going to see it kind of go dark to light to dark again. And then this is where it comes closer to the face, so then the cast shadow is not as harsh. I'm going to go ahead and round this a little bit here because your nose is round, it's not flat. So let's go ahead and round this out. And then this side gets a little bit darker, keeping this light here for our highlight. And let's pull, our nose is at an angle because this is coming out of our face. So you can see my pencil lined up as it's an angle. And my shadow is going straight down. So I need to pull this shadow over just a little bit more so that I can get it to look like it's coming out of the face this way. Okay, if you can notice, there is a little bit of a highlight here, which is a reflected light down here at the bottom. So I'm going to take the end of my eraser and erase that out. And you're going to notice once we start moving to the darker pencils that this is going to get a lot more crisp up. Right here in the bottom of the nostril, it's always softer. That soft light comes out here. The top of the nostril here is usually a crisper edge. So this part is usually a crisper edge, and then it gets softened as it comes out. And then I've got that reflected light that I erased out. I'm trying to get back in there. And you've got this kind of a triangle piece over here. So what I'm going to do now is remember that eventually you get a Cupid's bow that comes down here. That's what this shadow connects to. For now, I've got basically all of the nose laid out. All I'm going to do is continue to add contrast with the other pencils.